I'm Wayne Moore, Castanet News, along with BC Premier Christy Clark. It's our pleasure to have about 15 minutes with you, Madam Premier, before election time begins in a couple of weeks. But before we get into that, an issue locally that I'm sure you've been reading about and hearing about, homelessness in your riding in West Kelowna, something that's really come to the forefront over the last couple of weeks. Have you had a chance to talk to Mayor Findlater and Council about this issue and what the province possibly could do to assist?
We want to assist, and so BC Housing has started, is now talking to the city of West Kelowna, to thinking about, to talk about how we can address it. Now, and the issue really began in earnest. I mean, we've always had a little bit of a homeless issue. It's grown over the years, and then we've had a cold winter shelter, and now that's closing down because the weather's warming up. Those homeless people are finding their way back out into the street, and they need a more permanent shelter. Now, that work, though, we know this from other places, it needs to be done very thoughtfully because lots of people are concerned when a shelter comes to their neighborhood. So we need to make sure that it gets done right, but we do need to make sure it gets done. So that work's underway now.
What can BC Housing do, and how does that work with the municipality?
Well, what often happens is BC Housing will, the city will donate the land, BC Housing will build the building, and we will, and then pay to support operating it. And so it's really, these shelters are almost all kind of BC Housing related. We've gotten really good at it over the years. We've built more social housing, I think, in the last 15 years than any government in Canada. And that's, it's made a real difference for a lot of people. We know, though, that homelessness is not just people who don't have a home. It's many, many people who are coping with mental illness and addiction. And so, we need to build shelters, but we also need to build social and supportive housing so that someone can get out of the shelter, get into a more permanent home, get the help that they need for their illness or their addiction, and then move on, in their lives. But it really, there has to be a continuum there for people because, if someone's homeless and they're addicted, just getting out of the shelter doesn't mean they got better. It's temporary for a reason. We've got to help people over the longer term.
Water, of course, is a big issue around the Okanagan. Of course, a funding announcement for Kelowna for the Seekit and Soma water situations a couple of weeks ago. But today, another announcement regarding mussels, which is a huge concern within the Okanagan. Can you talk about that?
Well, I stay awake nights thinking about what would happen if invasive mussels got into the Okanagan. I mean, it would be just devastating. I mean, there are, think about how it will jam up Fortis and BC Hydro's dams and their power production. But then think about the impact on our lake and the ecosystem that we love and the tourism business that's all built around it. It would just be devastating. So today we're beefing up the budget even further. We're doubling again the number of conservation officers. It will be illegal to bring a boat that is to have an uninspected boat get into the water here. So every boat will have to be inspected, and that will be enforced. We also are going to have the Golden Crossing open 24/7. We're going to have more of them opened on to dusk, so we're expanding all those hours. And what we really need, though, I mean, it's a citizen effort here too. Everybody who lives here needs to be vigilant and make sure that everybody who's visiting understands their obligation. No boat should get in the water here if it hasn't been inspected.
I'm sure it's a politician's nightmare to open a political campaign with an RCMP investigation hanging over their heads a little bit. Can you talk about what, how you feel going into a campaign with that investigation?
Well, I mean, they've said specifically they aren't investigating any specific political parties. They're investigating two individuals who donated to a number of different parties and who are alleged to have not done that, have not managed that properly. So if the allegation is true and those individuals broke the law, they should be held to account. And that's what the law is for. So, to me, I mean, I think, we want to make sure that this is done properly and that people are held to account. If they break the law, you shouldn't do it.
Campaign contributions has been out in the news for several months now. You've been taking some political hits from the opposition, and now a new TV ad campaign suggesting that you've profited $300,000 from the party for efforts, fundraising efforts, et cetera, et cetera. Is that number accurate?
No, what I would say is, I think it's the beginning of what we're going to see a lot of. And the NDP are going to run a campaign that is just, it's going to be personal, it's going to be negative, it's going to be just the politics of attack. It's going to be, what we're seeing is the unfolding of what will be perhaps the most American style campaign we've ever had in British Columbia. Fair enough, they're going to say what they're going to say. Most of it won't be true. But I'm going to run on what I believe in. And we are the reason they want to talk about those things is because they don't want to talk about jobs. We're number one in job creation in the country. And the NDP don't even have a plan for jobs. In fact, they're standing against most of the projects that would create jobs. We have the lowest unemployment compared to the rest of Canada since 1961. They want to change that. What they propose would mean a whole bunch of people find their way into the unemployment line rather than out of it. I mean, so to me, I'm going to run on the things that we stand for, that I believe in. I'm going to be perfectly comfortable. Even, I know not everybody will agree with me, but I'm going to be honest with people about what I believe in. And so I think, on the one, you can run a campaign that's all the politics of sleaze, I guess, but I think people actually want to know what politicians are going to do for them. And that's what I'm going to focus on.
Do you apologize at all for money that the party pays for certain events, functions that you host?
Well, the party does that for the NDP too. Mm-hmm. So it's a pretty common practice across the province, and it's been something that's been happening in BC for over 20 years. So we don't do it anymore. But I think. I have two jobs. One is to be the Premier, and I work hard at that, and one is to be the leader of my political party, and it's important we keep those separate.
Love them or hate them, polls are there. They always have been, always will be.
You still believe in the polls?
Occasionally. You certainly make for good reading. We have seen latest polls suggesting that most British Columbians, 55% according to the polls, believe that you would say just about anything to get elected. How do you respond to that kind of criticism from the electorate?
Well, I think you get into a campaign and we'll get a chance to really talk about what it is we've accomplished. I said 4 years ago, look, we're going to focus on creating jobs in British Columbia. We went from 9th in job creation to number 1 in job creation. And we've been really focused on making sure that we are attracting more jobs. And remember, this has not been an easy time to do it. Look at Alberta. It's just in a terrible shape. United States, things aren't going great down south of the border either. So we are in a very uncertain time, and here we are, we're being successful at creating jobs in the province. We delivered $1 billion tax cut to people. And that's not saying we would do it, that's doing it. That's controlling government spending. We said we were going to do it, we did it. We said we were going to balance the budget, we balanced 5 of them. We didn't just say it, we actually did it. We said we're going to create jobs, we're number 1 in job creation, and we said we want low taxes. We delivered $1 billion in tax cuts in this last budget. So I know people are cynical about politicians, and I completely understand why. And I think that the NDP kind of muck-raking campaign is going to contribute to that even more. But I hope what people will do is, and the democratic process depends on this, is look at what we stand for. Do they want to vote for a party that supports jobs, that has a record of delivering jobs, or do they want to vote for a political party that just really wants to just say bad things about other people?